The actions of my husband's friend during his absence left me utterly astounded. You won't believe the turn of events. I am known as Nina. At the age of 61, I find myself reflecting on nearly 4 decades of marriage with my husband, Henry. In a serene existence, we have crafted a humble abode nestled within the gentle embrace of Northern California's foothills, where our back porch offers a view of majestic oak trees and the distant glimmer of the river. Life has lost its luster, and I find no desire for it to regain that shine. The rhythms of life are well known. The passage of time unfolds with certainty. Henry and I have discovered tranquility in that very simplicity. Upon hearing Henry's plans to fly to Ohio for a week, assisting his sister in settling her affairs post-surgery, I found myself not pausing for a moment. He has consistently been the type of man who prioritizes family, and I urged him to pursue that path. Though I would have joined, the thought of lengthy flights and frigid guest beds no longer held any allure for me. MYNs seemed to voice their discontent far too often these days. Several days into his journey, Henry reached out to me one evening. He inquired whether his longtime companion Julian might swing by to retrieve some of the fishing equipment he had stored in our shed several months prior. It seemed that the two had orchestrated a journey to the lake for when Henry returned, and Julian was filled with anticipation, eager to tidy up and prepare for their adventure. Julian and Henry had forged their friendship during their army days, a bond that had lasted over 40 years, filled with inside jokes and tales I had heard countless times before. Julian, perhaps a few years our junior, was in his late 50s, exuding a rugged charm that had mellowed with the passage of time. His hair had turned entirely gray, yet he maintained that robust, vigilant stance forged from years of dedication and hard labor. It had been some time since our last encounter, yet his charm lingered in my memory, tinged with a hint of mischief. He consistently offered a witty remark. As he appeared at the front door the following afternoon, I greeted him with a warm smile and extended an invitation for iced tea before he made his way to the shed. With a playful grin, he declared his continued mastery of the finest lemonade tea west of the Rockies as he entered the kitchen. Improved, I responded, did I have refined it since your previous visit? It was intended to be nothing more than casual conversation, light-hearted exchanges. Nothing seems amiss. As we settled at the kitchen table, the soft light streaming through the windows illuminated the silver flecks in his hair, and an unfamiliar quality lingered in the silence that enveloped us. Julian's gaze met mine with an intensity one hadn't experienced in years, not since the days before the gray hair, the reading glasses, and the gentle softness that time bestows. It lacked any overt flirtation. He was observant, catching the nuances, the way my fingers curled around the glass, the slight tilt of my head as I listened intently. Our conversation meandered through every conceivable topic. The children, his recent employment at the auto body shop, and even the trivial dispute he found himself in with his neighbor regarding the trimming of trees. For that single hour, I found myself laughing more than I had in weeks. As I rose to replenish our drinks, I sensed his eyes upon me, not in a way that felt intrusive, but rather with a warmth that sent a delightful shiver across my skin. Do you ever find yourself feeling lonely in his absence? He inquired, his tone now gentler. The question hung in the air, stretching out far beyond my initial anticipation. I pivoted slightly, offering a subtle shrug. At times, I find solace in the stillness. He nodded, his eyes reflecting a deep contemplation. I understand that silence can be quite pleasant. Yet, at times, it resonates with an unwelcome clamor, if that conveys the idea. I hesitated to reply immediately, as it truly resonated with me. I simply wasn't prepared to acknowledge it. Once he retrieved his gear from the shed, he paused at the threshold, allowing the moment to stretch before him. I observed it, a palpable hesitation, as if he was reluctant to depart just yet. You know, he said, rubbing the back of his neck, if you ever need help around the house while Mike's away, or even just someone to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out. His offer carried a softness, and all I could discern beneath it was a heartfelt sincerity. Yet, despite everything, a feeling awakened within me that night after he departed. As I stood before the mirror, brushing my hair, a poignant realization washed over me. It had been years since anyone had gazed at me with anything beyond a mere casual familiarity. Henry had a fondness for me, without a doubt. Yet we had found our way into that soothing cadence, akin to two familiar stones, nestled together, polished but no longer igniting any fire. That evening, my thoughts lingered on Julian far longer than they ought to have. The following day, I found myself in the backyard, pruning the rose bushes, when Julian's truck rolled into the driveway once more. With a casual wave, he emerged, striding forward while clutching a modest paper bag. "You left this in the shed," he remarked, a playful grin spreading across his face. "It appears the honor was indeed mine, yet I thought you were more deserving of the accolade." Within lay a jar of his carefully crafted strawberry jam. For years, he had been canning it, a habit I never missed the chance to tease him about. "I ought to have baked scones," I remarked with a playful tone, graciously accepting the gift. "Well," he said, that same mischievous glint dancing in his eyes, "maybe I'll stop by tomorrow, and you can." And just like that, a new essence began to emerge, something unforeseen, something delicate, yet undeniably tangible, a gentle disturbance in the serene surface of my daily existence, an emotion I had long denied myself the pleasure of experiencing. Not yet desire, not yet temptation, but rather a sensation that stirred my heart in a manner I had nearly forgotten it was capable of. And so I acquiesced, to the scones, to the visit, to whatever had begun to unfold between us, gently, subtly, like a whisper of wind through the open kitchen window. With the dawn breaking, I found myself awake before the usual hour. The sun had just started to rise, painting the kitchen counter with a gentle orange glow. I lingered by the window in my robe, observing as the light gradually seeped in, its warmth caressing my skin like a tender touch. Years had passed since I last baked scones, yet that morning, I found myself reaching for the flour, butter, sugar, and that beloved, chipped mixing bowl I reserved for special occasions. My fingers recalled the cadence, slicing the butter into the flour, gently folding the dough to perfection, and sprinkling the tops with a touch of raw sugar. I took my time. It possessed a certain therapeutic quality, a sense of grounding that was undeniable. I reassured myself that it was merely a cordial encounter. Julian had always possessed this charm, an effortless ease in conversation, perhaps a touch of flirtation that felt entirely innocent. Yet, regardless of how often I echoed that notion within my mind, a subtle tremor coursed through my hands as I placed the warm scones upon the cooling rack. He arrived shortly after 10, perfectly punctual. The sound of gravel shifting underfoot reached my ears. Just moments before the knock echoed through the stillness, I dried my hands on a towel, glanced at my reflection in the hallway mirror, and then turned the doorknob to step outside. Julian lingered, a boyish smile gracing his face as he cradled 2 paper coffee cups in his hands. He extended a drink toward me, suggesting, "I'll take care of the drinks if you manage the food." I moved aside to grant him entry. You've arrived at the perfect moment." They retain a lingering warmth. We found ourselves once more at the kitchen table, this time fully engaged, the air thick with unspoken truths, no facade of small talk required. The scones vanished swiftly, and we fell into that familiar, effortless cadence of dialogue, though this time it carried a hint of intimacy. He inquired about my artistic endeavors. Years ago, I found myself immersed in the art of painting landscapes. Watercolors capturing the river bend, the fields, and the blue-gray fog that gently envelopes the landscape after summer rains. It had been almost 10 years since I last touched a brush, yet a handful of my pieces remained elegantly framed in the hallway. "Why did you stop?" he inquired, his gaze fixed on me as I absorbed the intricate lines of a painting across the room. For a moment, I paused. Life intervened, labor, parenting children, nurturing the various elements of life. "You mean looking after everyone else," he said softly, his eyes drifting back to mine. His voice carried no accusation, only a deep sense of understanding. It struck a chord more profoundly than I had anticipated. As I gazed at my coffee cup, my finger danced along the rim, exploring its contours, It is perhaps all too simple to lose sight of one's true self when constantly embodying roles for the sake of others. He remained silent for a moment, yet the stillness was rich, brimming with meaning rather than void. It contained an unvoiced essence, a resonance that thrummed just below the exterior. Julian placed his cup on the table and reclined a bit. There are moments when you cross my mind, Nina. Not in an unusual manner, that I was simply curious about how you have been faring lately. Were you still to wield the brush? Joy radiated from you. That word lingered heavily in the space between us. Joyful. I parted my lips to speak, yet silence lingered in the air for a moment. What did happiness even resemble at this juncture in life? Did it follow a familiar pattern? Could it have been safety? Or could it be something entirely different, a facet of my being I had long neglected to investigate? Rather than responding, I rose from my seat and made my way toward the hallway. I retrieved an aged portfolio from the depths of the closet and brought it back to the table. I haven't revealed these to anyone in ages, I remarked as I unveiled it. Fanning out the pages before us, he examined them with great care and a sense of reverence. These are truly exquisite, Nina. A remarkable talent resides within you. His voice carried a depth of sincerity, resonating softly. Not a compliment designed to flatter, but one that recognizes something genuine and seeks to pay tribute to it. Have you ever contemplated the idea of beginning anew? He inquired. That I have contemplated it, I confess. Yet, I find myself questioning whether that fragment of my being still breathes. Julian leaned in, his gaze capturing mine with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. She exists. I am able to perceive her presence. For what felt like an eternity, silence enveloped us. In the atmosphere lingered a peculiar energy, vibrant yet devoid of peril. Near, yet courteous, it felt as though he had ventured into a hidden corner of my soul, one I had sealed off long ago, and tapped softly, awakening the essence of my being that lingered behind the barricade. He rose, cradling his coffee cup in his hands. I ought to be on my way, he remarked. His voice had taken on a gentler quality. I didn't intend to linger longer than necessary. I responded too hastily. You see, a smile crept across my face as I caught myself in the moment. Having someone to converse with was truly pleasant. Julian inclined his head in acknowledgement that I feel the same way. Upon reaching the door, he hesitated and glanced back. May I have the pleasure of visiting you once more in the near future? There was no need for contemplation. Indeed, that sounds appealing. He departed, and I lingered by the window, observing as his truck gradually vanished along the winding gravel path. My heart remained calmed. It was not a mere infatuation or a transient spark of midlife exhilaration. It was a subtle force, an undercurrent that stirred just out of sight, akin to the soft tug of a stream that goes unnoticed until you find yourself well into the crossing. That afternoon, I retrieved my weathered easel from the depths of the garage. Dust clung to the surface, and the wood had warped ever so slightly from years of neglect, yet it stood resilient as I positioned it in the sunroom. A small canvas caught my eye, and with brushes in hand, I set forth to create my masterpiece. Not due to Julian himself, but rather because of the memories he unearthed that I had long buried. As the evening descended, the house seemed to exude a subtle warmth. Its silence softened, its solitude diminished. The atmosphere felt buoyant, as though it had sensed the transformation within me. As I settled into my bed, a smile crept across my face, not born of thrill or bewilderment, but rather from the peculiar solace of being genuinely recognized once more. The subsequent days revealed themselves like delicate leaves of an old tome, known yet imbued with an air of novelty. Julian's visits were infrequent, yet each time he appeared, it carried a weight of significance, organic. A company that embraces the quiet, choosing to share it rather than fill it. One afternoon, I found myself once more in the sunroom, brush poised in hand, capturing the field behind our house as the light surrendered to a golden hue. It had been years since I felt such a profound connection to my own thoughts, not merely to the act of painting, but to my identity as a woman, as an individual who once harbored dreams, subtle hopes, and a profound sense of wonder. I meticulously cleaned my brushes, the doorbell chimed, interrupting the quietude of the moment. Julian lingered, a half-smile playing on his lips, a small bag cradled in his hand. He held it up and said, "I brought you something." Within lay a diminutive sketchbook, elegantly encased in rich, deep blue leather. "I thought that if you're picking up the brush once more, perhaps you'd also be inclined to put pencil to paper. At times, it proves beneficial, you see, to simply allow the currents to carry us onward." Initially, words eluded me. It wasn't that I lacked gratitude for the gesture. Rather, it was the rarity of receiving something so genuinely considerate that struck me deeply. My gratitude, Julian indeed. On that day, we reclined beneath the expansive canopy of the maple tree, close to the boundary of the fence. He shared with me the story of his daughter, how she had relocated to Oregon with her husband and seldom reached out these days. I paid attention, genuinely attentive, and when he chuckled at his own sentimentality, I softly placed my hand on his arm. It is not foolish to long for the presence of someone you cherish. The moment stretched out, defying the passage of time. His hand shifted subtly beneath mine, yet he remained still. Our gazes locked, and the silence enveloped us, thickening like a tangible presence, as though the very atmosphere was pausing in anticipation. I retracted my hand with a deliberate slowness. Caught in a web of uncertainty and inner turmoil, I rose and made my way to the boundary of the yard, requiring a moment to calm the whirlwind of thoughts swirling within me. Shortly thereafter, Julian made his entrance. "Nina," he said, his tone steady, "I don't wish to put you in an uncomfortable position." "You didn't," I said, turning to face him. "This is all quite unfamiliar to me. To what end?" To an observer gazing upon me, I released my breath, shedding the roles of wife and mother, simply embracing my own essence. He gazed at me intently, his eyes lingering on mine for what felt like an eternity. "All I perceive is your extraordinary nature." A sharp ache gripped my heart, a bittersweet blend of yearning and remorse. I cherished Henry deeply. That remained constant, yet love does not always signify the lack of something else. At times, it is a space illuminated by multiple sources of light. Julian moved nearer, yet he refrained from making contact. He moved in so near that I could sense his warmth, the subtle weight of his presence. "I'm not here to complicate your life," he stated, "but I cannot be dishonest. Your well-being matters to me." The sincerity in his voice resonated profoundly. It held no weight, no ulterior motives, merely authenticity. "I find myself at a loss," I confessed, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "There is no obligation for you to take any action. I stand ready to support you, whether as a friend or in whatever capacity you require." He departed soon after, allowing me the solitude I needed. That evening, I found myself in the sunroom, lingering in solitude long after the light had slipped away, gazing at my incomplete canvas. Memories of Henry flooded my thoughts, his unwavering steadiness, the warmth of his kindness, the comfort of his worn flannel shirts, and the gentle curve of his quiet smiles. Then there was Julian, whose laughter echoed in my mind, his focused attention, and the way he made me feel, as if I were a treasure unearthed once more. Is it truly wrong to find pleasure in both? Could it be considered betrayal just to experience the sensation of being truly seen by another soul? I was unaware. The following morning, a message from Julian appeared on my phone, a brief yet poignant note. "Thinking of you today. Wishing you joy in your painting endeavors." As I gazed at the screen, an involuntary smile began to form on my lips. As the day waned, I found myself seated outdoors, a sketchbook resting on my lap, when Henry's voice broke the stillness. His voice carried a lively enthusiasm. His sister was on the mend, and he intended to return home in 2 days. Excitement should have coursed through me, and indeed, a fragment of my being embraced it. Yet another part lingered in silence, torn and uneasy, sensing the shadow of an ending that had never truly commenced. As I ended the call, I shut my eyes and allowed the breeze to envelop me, stirring the leaves, murmuring secrets I wasn't prepared to voice. As twilight descended, Julian's truck rolled back into the driveway once more. This time, I chose not to linger indoors, but I had encountered him at the midpoint. "I have been pondering as well," I remarked. He inclined his head with a soft nod. "I'm not entirely sure what this is," I admitted to him with sincerity, "yet it holds significance for me. You hold a special place in my heart." Julian extended his hand with deliberate care, gently tucking a strand of hair behind my cheek in a movement so delicate it shattered something deep within me.
"I know," he said.
"That will suffice for the moment." He refrained from kissing me. He did not embrace me. We lingered in the waning glow, allowing the essence of it to seep into our very being. It was not an affair. It transcended the physical realm. Yet it was something infinitely more intricate, an emotional journey, a rekindling, a bond that required no consent. It had transformed me that on a Thursday afternoon, Henry returned home. I had baked a pecan pie, his favorite, and neatly folded fresh towels in the guest room, despite knowing he would need them. A sense of unease washed over me, though I couldn't quite pinpoint the reason behind it. He was my husband, my companion for almost 4 decades. As his car glided into the driveway, an unexpected flutter stirred within my heart. Not born of anticipation, but rather from the depths of uncertainty, he entered with that familiar, serene smile, a suitcase in one hand and his coat draped over the other. "You cut your hair," he remarked almost instantly, his eyes catching the subtle change in length that I had trimmed during his absence. "I certainly did." A sense of transformation lingered in the air. He pressed his lips gently against my cheek. Cozy, concise, friendly. The fragrance of his cologne wafted through the hallway, and for a fleeting instant, the world seemed to regain its familiar rhythm. Yet, I was no longer the woman he had once known. During dinner, he shared tales of his sister's recovery, the biting chill of Ohio's winter, and his longing for a genuine California tomato. I paid attention, chuckled, and replenished his glass whenever it ran low. Yet within, a fragment of my being resided elsewhere, dwelling in the silences, the fleeting instances when he overlooked the subtle changes within me. That evening, we found ourselves entwined in the warmth of the sheets, sharing the quiet intimacy of the night. He drifted into slumber swiftly, his soft snores echoing as they always did. I lay awake, gazing at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily in slow circles, my hands resting gently over my stomach. My mind wandered to Julian, not with yearning, but with insight. What we exchanged was not rooted in romance. It revolved around the essence of visibility, the recognition of a woman brimming with emotion, still alive with desire, transformation, and the potential for growth. He had ignited a flame within me that I hadn't even realized was lying in wait. Yet, my mind wandered to Henry, reflecting on the countless years we had faced together, enduring cancer scares, navigating our son's struggles with addiction, weathering financial droughts, and braving emotional winters. He had remained unwavering, secure, unchanging. He remained so. The following morning, while sipping coffee on the back porch, I confided in Henry my desire to pick up painting once more. His expression shifted to one of surprise, quickly followed by a smile. "Your paintings have always captivated me. You once found yourself utterly immersed in them." I was not lost, I asserted that I had been discovered. He nodded slowly, allowing the significance to sink in. He refrained from inquiring about the timing. He extended his hand toward mine, enveloping it with a tender grip. In the waning hours of the afternoon, I set pen to paper and composed a letter to Julian, neither a text nor a call. A genuine correspondence. I expressed my gratitude for his reminder of my true self, for unveiling a part of me that had slipped from memory, for the care, the regard, and the genuine emotional transparency. Yet, I conveyed to him that my decision to remain engaged in the life I had crafted stemmed not from a desire for ease, but from a deep understanding of its significance. Henry deserved all of me, not just the fragments that drifted into obscured shadows. I, too, was worthy of truth. I never received a response from Julian, nor did I anticipate one. That was a fragment of what rendered it exquisite. It was merely a chapter, not the entirety of existence, a fleeting instant in which two spirits discerned a shared essence within one another. Time slipped by, transforming weeks into months. Henry and I discovered fresh avenues for connection. Each morning, I found myself immersed in painting, a steaming cup of coffee accompanying me on this creative journey. He began to stroll alongside me during the evenings, paying closer attention and clasping my hand for just a moment longer. There were days when Julian crossed my mind, not accompanied by guilt or regret, but rather by a sense of gratitude, for it is often the unanticipated arrival that stirs to life what the mundane has gently concealed. Ultimately, no sensational events unfolded. No one experienced betrayal, yet an irrevocable shift occurred within me. I discovered the bravery to reclaim fragments of myself I once believed were lost. I came to understand that the journey to reclaim your voice, your brilliance, and your essence of truly living is always open, regardless of the time that has passed. As I found myself in the sunroom on a radiant morning, brush poised in hand, the canvas before me alive with color and energy, a smile crept across my face. I had ceased to linger in anticipation of recognition. I had caught a glimpse of my own reflection, and that sufficed beyond measure.